హాయ్ హలో నమస్తే వెల్కమ్ టు సుమన్ ఐటీటీవీ టెక్ టాక్ షో. యూజువల్లీ జియోనామిక్స్ అని మనం చాలా వరకు వింటూ ఉంటాం. మన డిఎన్ఏ అని చెప్పేసి మన హెల్త్ సెక్టార్లో మెయిన్గా జియోనామిక్స్ అనేది కూడా ఎలా పనిచేస్తూ ఉంటుంది. అందులో ఐటీ ప్రొఫెషనల్స్ కూడా బోల్డ్ అన్ని జాబ్స్ ఉన్నాయని కూడా రీసెంట్ టైమ్స్లో కూడా మనం వింటూ ఉన్నాం. మరి అలాంటి జియోనామిక్స్లో అసలు మన ఐటీ ప్రొఫెషన్స్ ఎలా పనిచేస్తూ ఉంటారు, అక్కడ ఉన్న ప్యాకేజెస్ ఏంటి, ఇలాంటి బోల్డ్ అన్ని సంగతులు అనేది కూడా మనతో మాట్లాడడానికి ఈరోజు మ్యాప్ మై జీనోమ్ సో ఒక వ్యవస్థాపకురాలు అను ఆచార్య గారు మనతో పాటు ఉన్నారు. హాయ్ మ్యామ్. సో వెల్కమ్ టు సుమన్ ఐటీటీవీ. సో థ్యాంక్స్ ఫర్ కమింగ్. హెల్త్ సెక్టర్లో మెయిన్గా అయితే జియోనామిక్స్కి ఒక ప్రత్యేకమైన స్థానం అనేది కూడా ఉంది. వీ హ్యావ్ ఏ గ్రేట్ ప్లేస్ ఫర్ ద జియోనామిక్స్ అండ్ మెయిన్గా అందులో ఐటీ ప్రొఫెషనల్స్ అనేది కూడా ఇంక్లూడ్ అయిపోయి దే ఆర్ గెటింగ్ ఎన్ హ్యూజ్ ఓపెనింగ్స్ ఫర్ ద ఐటీ ప్రొఫెషనల్స్. అంటే ఎలా జరుగుతుంది అండ్ దానిలో ముందు అంటే విల్ డిస్కస్ అబౌట్ దట్. బట్ వాట్ ఈస్ ద జియోనామిక్స్?
So genomics ante your entire body lo you have cells.
Yeah.
Right? In each of those cells you have a code for each. So whatever, when you are born, you get 50% of your genes from your mother, 50% from your father.
Right.
And that is the same in every cell of your body. Right. So whether it is your skin, your cheek cell, whether it is your blood or anywhere else, you are getting DNA code. That you can then, there is a, like you have A, B, C, D in English, and you have K, K, G, G in Hindi, and in Telugu we have our own alphabet. Similarly for DNA and for genomes, you have A, C, T and G.
Okay.
Right? These are the four what we call as the base pairs. These four base pairs create your entire DNA code, for which we can then say this is your recipe for your life, right?
Okay.
So when it is mine, then it has made me how I look. It basically helps in saying that will I be predisposed to a certain disease, or it can also help us understand where I came from and so on. So basically it's like a full recipe of, or a code which tells each cell to say, okay, what should I do and how do I behave, right? And ultimately that same code is when you decode it, and the entire code is called a genome.
Okay.
And we are basically reading that whole thing and then helping you understand so that you can live healthier, you can diagnose better and so on.
So by taking the DNA, so we can predict that where we are, where we came from, and what's the past means, forefathers, and we can detect these kind of things.
Correct. So you can do two things, right? One, you want to find out, you like you might think that you're from Hyderabad, for instance.
Yes.
Right. I'm from Rajasthan.
Okay.
But when I did my analysis, it showed that small percentage came from France.
Okay.
Right? And then also like a lot of it came from like Iran, like that area, because that's how how our ancestors migrated, right? So with this you can find out what is your ethnicity composition, right? So where is it, like are you fully I'm not 100% from Bikaner, which you think you are, but you have sort of been, your ancestors migrated from different parts of the world, and that's how you can understand that little bit. Right, so it will say, in my case, it might show majority of it is going to be from Rajasthan, from the north. Maybe for others it will be, but many people in the south also you'll find that some of the other you'll find like some Pathan blood. You might find something else. So I think it's interesting to just find out where did you come from, right? What is your ethnicity composition?
Okay.
And the second is to say, okay, where did exactly my ancestors come from? How did they migrate? So with that, you can look at certain haplotypes and understand the migration path as well.
What's the crucial part of this genomics in the health sector?
So in health, it has a lot of advantages, right? Because you can understand, one is, are you predisposed to diabetes or cancer or heart diseases and so on? That is one. To understand the risk, right? So it's not a diagnosis, but it's understanding or preventing of a particular problem in the future. That might be one. The second can be looking at how do you want to eat better, right? Everyone wants to now live longer, look younger, and so on. How do you eat the right kind of foods, right? For some people, a certain type of food might work better than not, right? So based on that, you create your own diet, you change your own nutrition. Or if you are, let's say, PV Sindhu or some great athlete, you might want to also, or even a normal person like us who wants to do better in sports, then you will also use that information to say, how do I make my timing better? How do I do all of that? So you can understand if you are at risk for injury, you can understand if you are you have the fast twitch muscle, you can understand if you are likely to be a marathon runner and so on. So you can do all of that. These all I would bunch as preventive. So prevention or for living better and so on. That is one part. The second part is you want to understand whether a certain mutation is there in your family, right?
Okay.
So you might find that epilepsy can be caused by many different things. So how do you understand, in your case, has it been passed on from your parents or is it sporadic, which means it just came in just that generation? Or you want to understand which medicine is working for you, right? For some people, metformin, which is common drug, might not work.
Right.
Similarly, you have clopidogrel, which is a drug, very common drug, but 30% of the people won't respond well. So you want to understand whether certain medicine will work for you. And in a lot of cases, in cancer especially, you will need to do that to understand what medicine needs to be given to you. So I think it is finding immense use both in personalized medicine, which is treatment, or in diagnosing a problem, or let's say you are planning a baby, right? So you want to understand, like parents want to come, like you look at both of their genomes,
Okay.
and you can find out if you are likely to pass on a disease to the child or not, right? And by disease, I don't mean a diabetes or heart disease, which is also important, but also like rare diseases like cystic fibrosis or any of these sickle cell, like thalassemia and others, which is okay to be a carrier, but not okay if they get from both the parents, because then the possibility of the child having the disease is very high. So we are seeing a lot of use in the baby planning of babies or in early children, cancer and neurology and many other cases as well, or from a diagnostic or treatment perspective.
ఇవన్నీ మనం ముందుగానే కనుక్కోవచ్చా ఇలా
కనుక్కోవచ్చు.
జియోనమిక్స్
Yes,
వల్ల? అండ్ ఇందులో మెయిన్గా మన ఐటీ ప్రొఫెషనల్స్ గల ఒక రోల్ ఏంటి మ్యామ్?
IT professionals ki chala roles ఉన్నాయి. First, I think you are looking at how do you program for, like you are looking at lot of data.
Yeah.
So one person, one genome, full genome cheste 90 GB of data is there.
90 GB?
Yes. So if you are taking an average person's genome, that is 90 GB. If you are looking at a diagnostic purpose, like what a doctor normally orders, that is 6 GB. And then like if you're looking at genotyping, that is also a few MB, like few MB of data. So all of this is, if you take on an average, one person has 3.2 billion base pairs, right? In one cell.
Okay.
Right? So in one cell, your genome is that much. Normally, so you're getting a lot of data, which means you need people to understand. You need data scientists, but you also need people who can do bioinformatics, which is basically analyzing all this data, or you also need to create systems, right? So for instance, you can't just give so much information without having like a lab information system. You cannot give information which will be reporting. You have to create these reports.
Right.
If you have to start doing it manually, it will take forever, right? So a lot of the things are done by IT professionals. So in our team, we have IT professionals, we have bioinformaticians, we have data scientists and so on. All of them need to be there for you to generate that report, which looks quite simple, but ultimately in the back, a lot of people are actually working to create that.
జియోనమిక్స్ కానీ లేకపోతే జీనోమ్స్ గురించి కానీ ఒక 10 years బ్యాక్ వరకు అంత విజిబిలిటీ కానీ అంటే అంత జాబ్స్ కానీ ఎక్కువ లేవు. కానీ రీసెంట్ టైమ్స్లో ఎక్కువగా దీని గురించి జాబ్స్ కానీ అండ్ ఆల్సో పీపుల్ ఆల్సో గెయినింగ్ ద నాలెడ్జ్ అబౌట్ ద జీనోమ్ అండ్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్. So why this drastic change came into the person's life?
So actually, 24 years ago, the human genome was decoded.
Yeah.
Appudu they spent billions of dollars to decode one person's genome, right? So this is 2000, 2001. Literally around that time, I jumped into genomics.
Okay.
So that time it was, you can imagine, it's very new, very expensive. One person's genome would, like first time they did it, cost a few $1 billion. When Steve Jobs, when he was sick, they did his full genome. It was costing about $100,000, right? So it was very expensive even in 2011.
11, right.
My Genome we started in 2013.
Okay.
When we first launched Genome Patri, which is genotyping, we launched it at about 25,000 rupees.
Okay.
Today, that same test we are offering at 7 to 8,000 rupees.
By
So
day by day,
the price will
price
come
also
down.
coming
So
down.
one is price has reduced quite significantly. Second is compute has become easy. You have so much options. You have like a lot of cloud computing options.
Right.
So it's easier to be able to do. Otherwise, previously we had acquired companies in the US and Netherlands and all. Our data centers used to be massive. Now you don't need any of that, right? So you have saved on a lot of infrastructure because you can just get access to compute. So that has changed. The third is it is also that data has become better, richer, right? So when we first started, we didn't know much about everything. Slowly, thousands and thousands of researchers have done research. You're getting more information, and therefore you can now understand better what this means, especially for specific population, Indian population, or earlier it was all the money was spent in the US and Europe. So you don't have much information on Indians. We started, we were the earliest to start this. We collected that data and made our algorithms better. So ultimately everything is based on algorithms, everything is based on data, and so your price has come down, technology has become cheaper, your knowledge has increased,
Right.
and so on. Now everyone thinks that okay, it's something that you've heard of. But 10 years ago, it used to be quite interesting.
Expensive and
it was
also
expensive, but also genetics or genomics, people thought it was for, people thought it was for understanding only rare diseases or something that was a genetic problem.
Yeah.
They didn't think that genetics could be used for, finding out where you are come from or finding out what food will work for you and all. So it took a long time before people started accepting, and now I think everybody is doing it to
Right.
understand your risk for cardiovascular disease or diabetes and others. Because it's not that you only want to understand that you have a risk, but there are enough solutions that are there. And so there's a newer science that has come now, and that is called epigenetics.
Epigenetics.
Yeah. So epigenetics means that you might have the code. So in your DNA code, it might say that you are predisposed to diabetes, like I am predisposed to diabetes. But if you do the right things, exercise or diet and all of that, then you know that you don't get the disease, right? Or you can delay that for a very, very long time. That is called the effect of lifestyle on your genome is called epigenetics. So on top of your genome, which basically you can understand by looking at certain tags within the genome.
Okay.
So there also you need, again, IT to understand. So you need the domain experts, you need the molecular biologists, and you need
Right.
people who understand what it means. But ultimately, you need an IT professional who will actually run these programs or be able to do that.
And what's the role of the bioinformatics in the genome?
Yeah. This data that I mentioned, you're getting so much data, right?
Right.
Bioinformaticians are basically either you have people who have understood statistics, so some of them can also program. The second is also you need people who will look at the entire universe of research and then see how do you make a conclusive statement. So for instance, when you're looking at a lot of the newer research that is there, you need some of the bioinformaticians to run the R programs or whatever you're running to get the results, right? So
Okay.
when we are giving a report on Genome Patri, we are saying that you are predisposed to something. Now, how do we make that conclusion? You are basically saying that you have an algorithm, and that algorithm is then created and run by bioinformaticians. You get a data that which says you are maybe 2 times as high risk or maybe a 0.1 times or whatever. That analysis is done by bioinformaticians. The second thing that you need bioinformaticians for is to say, let's say you are trying to understand some new mutation that is there.
Yeah.
Right? They scour the information across across everything, and then they have to decide if it is a mutagenic, which means will cause a disease, or it's something that's not yet classified, or it is benign, right? So you might have a tumor. Tumor might be a pathogenic tumor, or it might be a benign tumor, or it might be something that we still don't know well. So that classification is also done by bioinformaticians.
You said the IT professionals and the health sector. So both the hands only, then we can get in a sound like a genomics kind of thing. Okay, so those who are coming into this sector, like into the genomes like this.
Hmm.
So they have any knowledge, means health sector knowledge for the IT professionals kind of thing?
I mean, ideally, that is the best, right? So
Okay.
when we first started Ossimum, which is 24 years ago, I remember at that time, there were no, like literally 1 or 2 courses in the country, right? So we started, we gave an ad. I remember we got 2,000 applicants. One person had ever used any bioinformatics software, right?
Okay.
So for us, it was like a,
I got
okay,
a
fine.
huge application.
Yeah, but we had a lot of people who had gone into IT, but had done biology in their 12th grade.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people who studied biology, who understood a little bit of that, but didn't find opportunities, many of them had moved to IT.
Right.
Those guys got very excited because suddenly now you can use your domain expertise. So a lot of the people that we hired initially, they were those people who had moved to IT, but they had some knowledge of biology and others, and they came in. Now we are finding a good mix, and now you also have courses on bioinformatics. There are courses on where people are taught both, like right, biotechnology and others. So I think today it's a different thing. I mean, ideally, what we do is we get a team that is sort of mixed. So you have like people who understand the IT part of it, then you have people who understand the bioinformatics that's in between, and then you have the pure molecular biologists who are running the lab or who are also helping in bridging that out. And then there's one more part, which is the genetic counselors.
Okay.
These are people who will explain what does this mean to you, right? So you get a report. How do you understand what does that mean? So those are people who are geneticists, who are or genetic counselors who are saying, based on your lifestyle, based on your this thing, what does this report mean for you? So these are the different kinds of people. And mostly we have found that IT professionals, but they have to have some interest in this field. Okay. Because, if we are just looking at it as just another job, then probably I think they might not find it as exciting. But people who like the healthcare field, I think they really enjoy it because it gives the satisfaction of being able to help a lot of people, but you are also using your skills.
Everything agani IT, those are coming from the pure IT background, so they can enter into this field.
They can. So I'll give an example. Like right now, if you go to our website, we have created a resource for everyone called learn.mapmygenome.
Okay.
Right? Now you can use generative AI. You can use a lot of things, but we have created it so that it's easier for people to access information. Now that started off with people who came from a pure IT background, but they are able to build, right? So you need to build systems and then you need content, right? The content may be from people who understand both, but the pure background in terms of how do you build something that's easy for you to update and do all of that, that is built by the IT professionals, right?
Okay.
That becomes part of your website, but it's actually a internal system that allows you to be able to do that. Similarly, I think we have a lot of people who are pure IT who build like lab information systems. There you're doing everything from how do you place an order, all the way from how do you then manage it in the lab, and then how do you generate reports, how do you do after sales servicing and so on. So all of that has IT professionals who are.
Map My Genome. So when it started, so what's our motive behind to start the Map My Genome?
Year 2000, I started Ossimum Biosolutions. Ossimum Biosolutions also we started very, very early. I moved back from the US and started. And then 2005, 6 and 7, we had acquired 3 companies, one in the US, one in Netherlands and one in Germany. We became one of the largest in this space, right? So we said, okay, we have been able to accomplish what is there. And even though it was a new field, I think we were one of the largest in the world.
Okay.
But we looked at the data. We had acquired companies that had a lot of genomic data. We had databases ourselves, which are used by the FDA, EPA, and most of the pharma companies.
Okay.
Most of the data was Caucasian and not Indian. So I think for me, the motivation was that we are doing all this for pharma companies. But if you are thinking about a future which will have personalized medicine, which means that you and I could be living in the US, but we might be getting then medicines that are more tailored for a Caucasian population. So for me, that was the motivation, that can we add to this knowledge where we can make it better for the Indian population.
Right.
So we started with that thought, but it was obviously not an easy thing to do because you are starting new, and we had the kits where you can order a test online, you get it in your house. Right? So we started this about 2013, we started this.
Okay.
First with a product called Genome. So people can place an order, you get the kit, and like you did a COVID test, now everyone understands
Yes.
COVID. But here you do it yourself. So cheek swab you take. You
Okay.
don't have to take nose so it's not
A throat
uncomfortable.
kind of thing. Yeah.
It's quite an easy thing to do, and you send. So you're sending saliva, basically. You send saliva, then we extract your DNA, we then do a sequencing or a genotyping, whatever the thing is, and then we create the report. So for us, I think, for me, two motivations. One was, can we help people on the preventive side, right?
Mhm.
Because for most people, by the time you find the problem, it's too late, right? Then you spend a lot of money, but you don't get back the benefit of it. But if you're able to get people to understand earlier on in life, they've changed their diet and lifestyle
Right.
and or other things, then I think you're likely to save a lot of money for yourself, for the country, and for everybody. That was one. And the second was, how do you add to the knowledge of the information for the Indian population so that in the future you will be able to get the right kind of medicines for you, you can get the right kind of supplements, and
So we can delay our any genetic kind of diseases and like.
or
And
prevent it also, right?
prevent
Like,
it.
so
Oh.
if you're looking at, for instance, having baby, like when you're planning a baby,
Mhm.
you can plan that out before. In India, we do a lot of arranged marriages mostly.
Right.
You can just check both people's genome. So we have something called Match My Genome. You match them and see if you're likely to pass on a known genetic disorder, right? And especially, I think in the South, we have a lot of consanguineous marriages, which means you marry your family, like within
In the relation.
in the relation. Now, the reason you probably it's not a good idea is that many times the markers are the same.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
So if you have a mutation, you're likely to amplify that mutation, if I will. And so what you can do is you can test both the genomes, find out if you have something, you are a carrier of some pathogenic disease, and then if you match it out and see if it is there, then you probably will. That is a better, in my opinion, would be a better thing than looking at many other things as well. Right?
Okay.
Because ultimately, when you have a child who has a problem, I think it affects the whole family.
ల్యాబ్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ సిస్టమ్ అంటే ఏంటి అసలు?
If you're thinking about how do you manage everything, right? మీరు ఆర్డర్ చేస్తారు,
Yeah.
right? You want to track that order, right?
Yeah.
So you want to, one is every sample barcodes వస్తాయి. So you place an order, you get back the sample, you ship a sample. So let's say you placed an order. When you place an order, for us, we use that information to then generate, there's a barcode that's generated, that's attached to your order. Once you send back your sample, they just scan the barcode, then that barcode is there. So you can separate out your personal information from the lab from information that goes into the lab for processing. So your people in the lab don't have to know that it is your sample, right? So it's a barcode, and then that gets processed. So one is for creating all these databases and for making sure that you don't confuse personal information with the data that is there, but they're connected. Second is that you want to also understand how do you manage this whole process within the lab. Who gets to run the sample, how much reagents you have, how much doing all of that. Just the managing of the people, process, consumables, your lab reagents, your protocols, all of that is managed through this process. Once it's done, then you get a lot of data. Right? We talked about how much 90 GB of data or at least 6 GB or whatever you have. When the data comes in, you want to also then analyze it. So we automate the whole system. So once the sample comes in, all the way to creating a report, the LIMS manages that for all of us, right? So it becomes a central repository of data, but it's also the place where people can start running the programs, can start making sure that the reports are generated. So LIMS is basically a software system that manages the entire processes within our system. Right? And then there are other systems. For instance, you may have one which I was mentioning, that Learn, which is a different system that also talks to this. Right? So you have multiple systems, but this is like your core system in the middle. And then you might have like an analysis software, you might have an instrument, you might have some other systems. All of these will then talk to the central system that is there, so that you have some sort of a connection, but you can also have separation of all these different systems that you have.
What kind of language is used for this and frameworks
limbs?
and for the limbs?
So we have undergone, this is like now the 4th generation of limbs that we have.
Mhm.
You can use any language that you want, but what we have done mostly is we started off when we had a thick client and a thick this thing. It used to be the Java, the
Java.
older version. Now I think we have a different layer for the web component, then we have a separate this thing. So you can use different kinds of, I think language now becomes irrelevant. But I think for us, it is primarily because we started with Java. I think we've used type of Java technologies, but we went from thick client to now using a SaaS-based version. We are using all of those so that it's easier for customers to be able to do. And when we have like a lab in Delhi, lab in Bangalore, and others, you have easy accessibility of these. So earlier you had to install, I think, in individual systems. Now you don't no longer have to do
Yes,
that.
right.
So I think that's what we are doing now. And so we have the limb system, and then we are now creating something that is even simpler, so that most people don't have to learn a lot of the stuff, creating a sales order, creating all of that. If they are doing all of it, we are making a simpler version for people, which will interact them with
Okay.
that. So trying to reduce the complexity for any new person to onboard, I think has become an important thing for us.
Means listening about the generative AI and everything. So how important the generative AI in this sector?
I think it's important, but you have to still do a lot of fact checking,
Okay.
right? Because I think generative AI is getting better and better.
Yeah, right. Day by day,
Yeah, it's definitely getting better. And so for us, for instance, sometimes what used to take us a lot of time, because sometimes you might have a creative block. Right? You're writing a blog, you just don't have this thing to write it. I think that really helps you to be able to do that. That is number one. Second is, I think images has made tremendous help in generating the right kind of images and all of that. But I think in many cases, because it's still technical, it's still evolving, I think you still need a domain expert to oversee a lot of that, right?
Yes.
So you might generate content, but you want to make sure that the content is correct. That is, I think maybe over the next few years it will get better. But till now, I think we do have to have some sort of an approval system where somebody at least can go through it. But creating sentences, like, I think sometimes you need not get someone who's perfect in English. You can now write badly and then ask generative AI to correct it for you. So I think there is value, but I think one shouldn't leave it such that people stop thinking altogether. Right? I think that's one problem that people think you will get towards. But I think for human beings, I think we can still continue to evolve,
right,
and still continue to do things that generative AI still can't do. But generative AI will become like what we got used to with search and other things. I think will become another tool for all of us.
So you said that a lot of data has been stored mainly in genomics about the one single person with the one cell like that. So cyber security. So what's the major role that was playing in this?
That's very important because see, your genetic code is private to you. You don't want to necessarily.
It's personal information.
It's personal information,
right?
And you don't. And that's why I was saying that when our samples come in, what we send to the lab is different from what your name and contact information is.
Right.
And that's why having barcodes and having activation codes and all is very important. In fact, we were going to use a blockchain-based solution, but then in India it became very hard to implement something like that because people expect like a flebo to go in and collect the sample and all of that. So you can have a complete separation of that if you want it. But for right now, I think the minimum thing that you have to do in any genomics company will be, one, consent is necessary. Right? So if people understand what does it mean to get a genomic data, what does it mean to do that? So there are 3 types of consent that you get. The second is separating out the personal information from the data that is there. The third is you make sure that you get the cybersecurity certifications. And that basically covers some of this, but it also has more this thing so that you don't have any data thefts or hacking.
Cyber attacks kind of thing.
Cyber attacks. So that's what we did. We did the cybersecurity certification, but we also you have to practice certain things internally as well, so that you're not, you can separate it out. You're getting the right kind of consent, and I think that helps in maintaining that.
So while talking with you, so from past half an hour, I got to know. So this is an health sector and it's an IT. So compared to the health sector, there is a lot of means as a massive role of the IT sector is there. Is it right, ma'am?
It's correct. And
compared to the health sector.
See, I think the problem is health sector also uses a lot of IT.
Yeah, right.
Some people can get by without using it, but I think if you do that, then you miss out on opportunities that the data could have provided. Right? So even, let's say, a regular diagnostic lab that just does, let's say, blood tests.
Right.
Now that data is also incredibly valuable. But for most people, I think they just throw away those reports. Right? But if, let's say, if you were a person who could 10 years later get all the information that was there, you can start creating analytics around that. You can do a lot of stuff. So ultimately, it depends on companies, what they want to do with the data. But I think genomics is even more fascinating because of the that data doesn't change. So it becomes a lot more valuable because once you have data, then you can plan your whole life around that, right? You don't need to, it's not like your HbA1c might keep changing, for instance, but your predisposition remains the same. So that becomes very valuable. It's like a constant in your life. You're not changing that, but you can change your lifestyle, you can change other things.
Right.
And therefore, understanding of genetics is, I think, in my opinion, is very valuable once you know the baseline. Once you know the baseline, you work on it and get that better.
5G టెక్నాలజీస్ జియోనామిక్ రీసెర్చ్ని మరి టెలిమెడిసిన్లో ఎలా ట్రాన్స్ఫార్మ్ చేయగలదు?
Like you have a lot of data that's coming, right?
Right.
I'm wearing this or a ring. A lot of data is coming from there. I can see you're wearing a watch also.
Yeah.
So you're collecting data, right? You're collecting a lot of parameters that are real time. Right? So genomics is like your baseline. But if you have good 5G technologies, you have data that is going to be collected at every second. And you have technologies that sort of put these pieces together, right? So you have ML and others information. So you today you are going to, let's say, you get a blood test done, right? And you are getting that information, putting it in there. But they are all separated in little pieces of information that is there. But if you had something that puts all these pieces together, your genetic information, your information of your blood, wearable devices, you're taking information that's coming from your blood test, microbiome, and many other things, then it becomes easier for someone to make decisions, right? So it becomes easier to say that, okay, do I need to take a probiotic today?
Okay.
Do I need to understand what is happening today? Is my sleep has gone down, it has changed some of the other parameters. What do I need to do? So I think today the way we are used to medicine is very different. I think if you take 5 years later, you will find that medicine will be very different.
Right.
I think if you've seen research in Japan, for instance, they're going to use your urine and stool on a real-time basis to get some of that information as well.
Okay.
So I think over the next few years, as more data becomes available, you understand more on the epigenetics, your microbiome and your genetics, and you can piece all these pieces together. So for instance, we are using Humanity, which is an app. And in that app, you upload your blood test report, you upload your genetic information, and it will tell you, okay, maybe your age is 40 today, but based on your blood test report, based on your wearable information, based on all that, maybe your actual biological age is 45. You need to change that back to 40. Right? How do you change that aging? And that allows you to be able to do that.
Okay.
So there are many pieces to health. It is not just a blood test, or it's not just genetics, not just epigenetics or microbiome. You need data that is coming real time, data that's coming from all these pieces, put all of that together in a simple format. So that for a customer, it doesn't seem like, oh, there's like 90 GB of data, I have this and I have that. How do I make it easy so that I get that information I need to actually perform the next action I need to? So I think that's what it helps. When you have better 5G technology, you have better wearable devices, you have better information and you have better ways of machine learning
Machine
to put
learning.
all of that together into something that's simple. And I think that's what we are doing. So we created what we call as a GBIOS.me,
Okay.
where you're taking genomics, and biomarkers and all that, and putting it together. Then we have now a partnership with Humanity that does the basic information on what time, how many hours did you fast, did you go out in the sunlight, did you walk over there? So some basic information, and you can upload a lot of your reports. Makes it very simple to understand
Okay.
what is going on. So I think that is another area that I feel that with all these technologies, it's all converging together.
మెయిన్గా అయితే ఐటీ స్టూడెంట్స్కి ఏ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ జాబ్ ఓపెనింగ్స్ అనేది కూడా మన జియోనామిక్స్ ఫీల్డ్లో ఉంటాయి మ్యామ్.
So jobs, I think programming jobs are there. Second is jobs in, if they're interested in bioinformatics, they should probably do some course in bioinformatics, and then it becomes easier. So IT students who have that gives them that edge. The third is now with machine learning coming in, I think there are machine learning and data science jobs, because so much data is there to understand. The third kind of this thing could be that you are looking at, how do you constantly keep incorporating all these new things that's coming up? How do you simplify everything?
Okay.
Not just from a reporting perspective, but also from understanding, right? So one of the things that we are doing, for instance, we are helping people understand if some mutation is there. How do you get knowledge about that, right? So you can go to our website, search for the gene, we'll give you information, which product will help you. We'll help you understand which diseases it can cause and all that. So I think in creating knowledge bases. So I think IT professionals have a lot of opportunities in genomics, both from analysis to creating the basic infrastructure to understanding of the business process and others. But mainly, I think that people who are getting in there should have an inherent interest in this field.
ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్.
Yeah.
ఓకే. ఎంతవరకు ఇందులో జాబ్ ఓపెనింగ్స్ అనేది కూడా ఉంటాయి, అండ్ వాట్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ ప్యాకేజెస్ విల్ బి దేర్ ఇన్ దిస్ ఫీల్డ్?
Packages are similar to what you will get in any IT industry also. We typically don't necessarily, because we don't need that many IT professionals. We are not huge. We are not like a TCS or
No.
the number of people we take will not be as high, but the people that we take will be on competitive packages as others, right? Because and probably you need more specialized skills. So sometimes that can even be even higher depending on the kind of people. So bioinformaticians definitely get higher.
Okay.
Because they are not so commonly found. So it depends on the experience and the thing. For basic programming also, I think there are people who are at, for the LIMS systems, for instance, you can specialize in specific types because they are available across the board. So you can find jobs not just in companies like us, but also in companies like a big IT company that is maintaining some of these systems as well. The
Okay.
advantage of working in a company like My Genome will be, you're building the system versus maintaining the system.
యూజువల్లీ ఐటీ ఇండస్ట్రీలో ఒక వర్డ్ అనేది రెగ్యులర్గా మనం వింటుంటాం, ఇట్స్ ఎ రెసెషన్. సో జాబ్స్ విల్ బి లే ఆఫ్, దిస్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ థింగ్స్. సో ఈ లే ఆఫ్స్ కానీ ఇలాంటివి కైండ్ ఆఫ్ మన ఐటీ ప్రొఫెషనల్స్ మెయిన్గా ఈ ఫీల్డ్లో ఏమన్నా ఉంటాయంటారా?
I mean, we don't hire that many people, so we don't fire that many people.
Okay.
Also, right? But it is true. I think today the person who joins, I think even students who are joining, they have to realize that IT in 2000 was very different from IT in 2010 to what is there now.
Right.
They have to be constantly upgrading their knowledge also.
Okay.
Right? Because you can't because it's much easier. Right? Today you can become a programmer with generative AI. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You might not be the best programmer, but you can still do it. So I think if people have to be smart about how they are picking their subjects and what they are doing with that knowledge, and they have to be constantly doing new things. So I think that for a lot of the newer IT professionals who are coming in, they should choose domain and also specialize a little bit in those areas, because I think pure programming jobs at low levels will go away.
Okay.
In the future, right? Maybe see, My Genome is different. We have a small thing, it's different. But I think in general, low level jobs, I think are not going to be, people shouldn't be dependent on very low level jobs, and they will not be they will be replaced. So they have to make sure that they are updating their knowledge
Okay.
on a regular basis, because otherwise it becomes hard to sustain,
Yes.
right? Because if you have to not just think about, will I give a job to someone, but it also makes a difference between saying that if I can do it without a person, it's lesser cost for an
Right.
employer, right?
Hmm.
So I think while generative AI and others are great, I think it is also definitely is something that if they don't have enough expertise in a certain area, they should be worried about it. So they should definitely finding some area, whether there some interest in, let's say, psychology or banking or healthcare or
Yeah.
whatever it is. I think it's important to be educating yourself with areas that maybe machines can't touch yet.
So according to the situations, they have to upgrade themselves and they have to
I think that would be my advice for people, that don't just think that you have learned a language. Because I think in our time when I graduated, that was in the 90s.
90.
You had to learn a language from like scratch. Right?
Yes.
Like you learned C programming. We even did Fortran and all of that. That's all completely outdated today.
Yes.
So I think if you can update yourself, you learn how to use generative AI to do this thing, you'll do faster than others.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you have to do. It's not that programming will go away, but programming for very basic things will go away.
Okay.
So you will have to be smart about what you do.
So thank you so much for your time spending here, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
సో గైస్ మెయిన్గా అయితే జియోనామిక్స్లో అండ్ ఈ జియోనామిక్స్ ఫీల్డ్లో మరి ఐటీ స్టూడెంట్స్కి ఎలాంటి ఓపెనింగ్స్ ఉంటాయంటే మెయిన్గా అయితే సో బయో ఇన్ఫర్మాటిక్స్ అండ్ డేటా సైంటిస్ట్ అండ్ ఎక్కువగా ఇలాంటి జాబ్స్ అయితే చాలా ఎక్కువగా హ్యూజ్గా ఉన్నాయని కూడా అంటున్నారు. సో అలాగే కొంచెం నాలెడ్జ్ ఎవరైతే హెల్త్ ఇండస్ట్రీలో ఎవరికైతే ఉంటుందో వాళ్ళకు మాత్రం అదుపు ఉండదు. సో వాళ్ళకైతే ఈజీగా జాబ్స్ వస్తాయని కూడా మన గెస్ట్ అనురాధ గారు కూడా చెప్పారు. సో థ్యాంక్ యూ.